And I have with us Captain Matan Ohana. Could you share a story from your grandfather's history?
He thought to stay in Europe. He didn't thought to come to Israel, but then he took the metro train one day, and two people were talking to each other in Hungarian, and one of them told to the other that it's a shame that Hitler and the Nazis didn't kill more Jews, because it seems that more of them came back after the Holocaust. Yeah. So in that moment, he always said that in that moment he understood he have no place other to live as a Jew beside the land of Israel, and he just went to his apartment, packed his belongings, his things, and just took the first ship to Israel.
Wow, it's a 16-year-old kid.
16 years old kid. Yeah. And then he immediately went to the army. So they took him to the south, but on the way to Tel Aviv, they wanted to reach Tel Aviv and Ashkelon, the bridge called Gesher Ad Alom. Gesher Ad Alom, it means Gesher until here. The Israeli army said, until here you conquering, not more.
Outgunned, outnumbered. In every way, it was like, how did they hold the line?
You're listening to Pod for Israel. For more information, go to oneforisrael.org.
I want to welcome you to another Pod for Israel, and this is a special Pod for Israel. We just had the sirens, the memorial sirens just went off just a few minutes ago. Here in Israel, it is Memorial Day. And today, we remember the 23,928 IDF soldiers who've perished since the founding of the nation in 1948. And I have with us Captain Matan Ohana. He is leading up our SOFAN ministry to IDF soldiers. And so we have a ministry to all of our Messianic soldiers in Israel. And you're an active duty soldier as well, not active duty, you're in reserves.
In reserve duty, yeah. Shalom, right. Everyone.
So I just want to have you come on and just share with us a little bit about this holiday. Like what does it mean? Because it's not just, this is kind of there's a sister holiday with it. So we celebrate the Memorial Day and then we celebrate the Independence Day. So it goes from a somber day to a party.
Yeah. So actually, if to people around the world, those 2 days are maybe not quite, or maybe quite difficult to understand if you don't know the context of things and the history of why those 2 days, the Memorial Day and straight after are Independence Day. And it's like 48 hours that you moving from grieving and sadness, remembering all our soldiers that fall in the battles and wars since the foundation of Israel, the Independence War, until today. So for 24 hours, we remembering them and grieving about those losses, and straight after we moving to 24 hours, which we celebrating our Independence Day.
And it's a really stark day. I mean, I remember last night we were coming back from the Golan, shooting in Katzrin in the biblical village there, a new outreach video, and as we were coming back, first of all, we pulled over right as the sirens were about to sound. We knew it was coming, so we pull over, and then you hear the sirens all throughout Israel. All the emergency air raid sirens go off at that mark, right? And everyone gets out. Everyone stops. No matter what you're doing, everyone stops, and you stand for a whole minute, the sirens sound, and everyone gives attention. And, coming from America, I've never seen anything like it. It's the whole country, no matter where you come from, no matter what your background is, everyone honors the day. And, I just think of like Memorial Day in the States, and I have family that's in the military and so forth. It's like you just barbecue. I mean, hardly any thought is actually put towards the soldiers, but here it is intense. Everyone gives honor. Everyone stops. And so you have two sirens. One was last night, and the other one we just had.
Yeah, so the first one is opening the day. So last night in 8 o'clock was the first siren, and from that time, restaurants are closed. People are less people going to work. Today is like a half-day working day.
Yeah.
And all the country is moving to like first gear. It's you just
slow down,
almost slowing down everything and just starting to think about the people that Israel. In 70 years, we passed so many wars, so many terrorist attacks, and we just in many ways we fighting for our survival in the Middle East, for our freedom, for having a democratic Jewish country in the Middle East. So in those 70 years, I will say that almost every Israeli have this day is not like something out of the blue. It's like it's personal because someone that fell in battles or fall in the wars, or someone that was a victim by a terrorist attack. So for almost everyone, it's personal. He knows someone that's been killed or fall in battles. So
and dozens of people who've been injured. At least,
and if you ask me, it's in our Jewish culture and also Israeli culture to respect the Holocaust Memorial Day and the soldiers and terrorist attack Memorial Day. That's what we're talking about. But it's a lot because it's personal. Someone. So for me, for example, I grew up in a village that all my friends, we all went to combat units, and we for generation, this village that I grew up in, known by that. So I know few people that fell in terrorist attack or in the last operation and wars that we had in the last few years. So for me, it's personal because I have friends, but also let's take for example, my grandfather, that he came from Europe as a young teenager, lost all his family in the Holocaust, came to Israel a few months before the Independence War. And the Independence War broke, and he went to the army and fought, and he lost even friends. So when he was, he died a few years ago, but when he was alive, so the Holocaust survivor, the Holocaust Memorial Day was so personal for him because all his family. So for me as his grandson, it's very emotional day. And a week after, which is the week that we are now today, we have the Soldiers Memorial Day, and he remember all his friends that he lost in the Independence War. So just in terms of family aspect, look how much it's personal for my family. This Memorial Day, and also the Holocaust Day that we had, the Memorial Day that we had last week.
Wow. I mean, thank you for your service to the country and for your grandfather's service. It's like you have this amazing heritage of fighters. And then here you are today serving our fighters, here in Israel, our soldiers.
Yeah. So
could you share a story from your grandfather's history?
Wow. There is many things there is many stories. So he grew up in Hungary. So the Second World War broke when he was around 10 years old, something like that. The Nazis took his parents to camps, and they died there. He stayed in Budapest, which is the capital of Hungary, for a few years with a relative, and he have so many stories how by miracle he was saved and not taken to the camps when he was a kid. But he finished the war. I think he was in the age almost 16, something like that. One of the
and he was on his own.
Yeah, he was on his own, alone in the world. But one of the maybe interesting stories was he thought to stay in Europe. He didn't thought to come to Israel. But then he took the metro train one day, and two people were talking to each other in Hungarian. And one of them told to the other that it's a shame that Hitler and the Nazis didn't kill more Jews, because it seems that more of them came back after the Holocaust. So in that moment, he always said that in that moment he understood he have no place other to live as a Jew beside the land of Israel. And he just went to his apartment, packed his belongings, his things, and just took the first ship to Israel.
Wow, it's a 16-year-old kid.
16 years old kid.
That.
Yeah.
His parents have been murdered.
Yeah.
And then he comes out of that to hear that conversation.
Yeah.
And then by himself gets on a ship and comes to Israel.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly. So, and then he immediately went to the army, because every 16, 17 years old, they just, in that time, I think he was already 18, but they just need young people. So he went, recruited to the army, fought the Independence War, and then started his family.
What area did he fight in? Where was he stationed?
So he was in the south. So they took him to the south. Against which, when we're saying to the south, it's against the Egyptians. The Egyptian army conquered Gaza, of course, and then tried to build bridges to cross the two small creeks or rivers that we have there. But on the way to Tel Aviv, they wanted to reach Tel Aviv, and the Israeli army in that time, it's called the Agana, that was the resistance, stopped them just there next to Ashdod and Ashkelon. The bridge called Gesher Ad Alom. Gesher Ad Alom, it's mean Gesher until here. The Israeli army said, until here you conquering, not more. We don't give you another meter. So
And talking about, I mean, guys, dig in. There's so many amazing documentaries that are out about these wars and how outgunned, outnumbered, in every way. It was like, how did they hold the line?
Yeah.
Only God could have done it. Only God could have prevented this from being a massacre. But they did. It's like they just, in faith, they took it and said no further. It's like, the Egyptians had more tanks, they had more firepower, they had more guns, they had more people, they had.
If you're looking
everything.
in the Independence War, if you reading about it and just looking at the facts, and the Yom Kippur War, for example, it's hard. You need more faith to think that we did it by ourselves. It's just 100% God's hands and God's control, because we were outgunned, out ammunition.
The arms embargo.
Yeah, I mean, in the Independence War, we're talking about 5 Arab armies that attacked Israel simultaneously, and with trained armies, and
5 nations, fully fledged nations,
and we didn't have anything.
Wow.
Yeah, and just 100% God's hand. And I encourage, by the way, everyone to read more about the Independence War and Yom Kippur War, because that's just a miracle and another example of how God is faithful to His promises and to Israel.
Yeah, so we encourage you listeners. I know a book. I love. There was one book called "Oh Jerusalem," like "Oh Jerusalem," and I think Larry Collins wrote it. But basically, it's just you're reading this story. And I don't know if you guys watched the series 24. It plays out like a series of 24. You're just like, oh my gosh, it makes Jack Bauer look like nothing. It's absolutely staggering what God did in that time and how, against all odds, this nation came to being.
Yeah.
And which is amazing because, you mentioned that we go from this day of somber memorial where restaurants are shut down. I mean, as we were coming back from the Golan, even the Arab villages, all the restaurants on the roads were shut down.
Yeah.
No one's alive. I mean, this is heavier than even like some of the heaviest Jewish holidays. It's like everything is closed. So you go from that somber memorial to this crazy party.
Yeah.
And crazy celebration. And you're saying there's some controversy behind that. Some people are like, should we do that? But I think that there's some good support on why we do.
For almost 70 years, there is this debate. Since in 51, the government passed the laws that it's going to be Memorial Day, 24 hours, and the Independence War going to come straight after. And since that time, there is this debate, this conversational, this debate about the question if it's the right thing to do, to put them one after the other. And it's interesting to hear some families of soldiers that fall in battles think that it's not the right thing to do. But I can say that the majority of Israel and the majority of the families of veterans that fall in battles will agree that in the big picture, that's the story of the Jewish people. We suffered so much in exile and in the Holocaust, and we sacrificed so much to be a free, democratic Jewish country here in the Middle East. And why they died, all those soldiers, all those people, that we can live today in freedom here in Israel. So to in one hand, 24 hours to remember them, to grieve on their memorials, and in the other hand to remember why they did it, that we will be free and live in prosperity in Israel.
You're celebrating their sacrifice.
We're celebrating that they died to give us life. So and when we're celebrating in Yom Ha'atzmaut, we always, actually, it's in the back of your of your mind that actually 24 hours ago, or even 12 hours ago, you were grieving, on the soldiers. But so it's making this celebration and this happiness of independence, even giving it another meaning, that
Right.
people who are fall in battles to give us life, and it's even giving another prospect of respect to this Memorial Day.
That's right. And everyone, I mean, you were telling me earlier, like the kids, in their schools, they go and visit the memorials all over the country.
It's in the culture, it's in the laws of Israel, that as a kid, I remember since kindergarten, the kindergartens or the schools, they taking you to the memorials, you putting flowers and candles,
Right.
you hearing stories of battles and people that were falling, and their personal stories, and what they like to do in life, and what their hobbies, and in schools, the parents of fallen soldiers coming and telling the story, and it's just a big respect. They just getting a lot of respect, the families and the fallen soldiers, and I think it's one of the days that, as a nation, as Israelis, we're taking very seriously, and you see how everyone is coming together, and it's beautiful.
It really is beautiful. It's a real beautiful holiday. It even has some kind of beautiful mirror images from the sorrow to the celebration of, like, Yom Kippur also is like a somber, heavy day, and then at the evening time, it's like a celebration. It goes in back from the fasting of Yom Kippur to a celebration of life, of that we've been redeemed, and of that we've been atoned for. And, that whole idea is that it enters into the celebration time. And then, of course, we have Sukkot and stuff. But, there's a beautiful kind of mirror image of that.
Yeah.
And, it's just, I love it. I love it. And, it also kind of brings up the importance of the ministry you guys do.
Yeah.
And, thinking about the trials that our soldiers face, what you mentioned, that, like 3 or 4 people just from your village who died, but then dozens of people who've been injured in these wars.
Yeah, exactly.
And then even more. Like, I think we have a testimony on some of our Hebrew testimonies. Is one of them she's an Israeli soldier who went through major PTSD.
Yeah.
From her time in service. So, it's like when we think of injuries, it's not just the physical, like I lost a limb or something in the battle, or I got shot, shrapnel, whatever. It even mentally, the scars that you face of seeing your friends killed in front of you, dealing with the conflict, dealing with the tension. Yeah. And it's a good day for us to minister to our soldiers.
Exactly. Yeah. So, there is a lot of influence or from the situation that Israel is that serving in the Israeli army is mandatory. Everyone's going, girls, boys. When you're reaching the age of 18, you're just going to the army. So sometimes you can be combat and there is risk for your life. But even if you are close to the battles, or even if you're in intelligence, or a lot of other things to do in the army,
right.
There is consequences if it's spiritual or a PTSD, for example, or so many other things. So what we're doing in Tzofen, in the soldiers ministry, is just equipping them, building them, strengthening them spiritually to be just light and testimony to their Jewish brothers and sisters in the army. And that's we are all for that, just serving them, our believers, soldiers in the Israeli Defense Forces.
Well, I encourage you guys, we'll send a link below so you guys can learn more about what Matan's ministry is, and how One for Israel is reaching the soldiers here in Israel and helping to disciple them through that. And so it's amazing to hear, the stories from you, even Dave, his brother, is like a big commander in the army, and how Messianic soldiers more and more are having great influence in our nation's defense.
That's right.
So it's so beautiful to see how that's growing and how God's promoting that ministry. And so if you want to learn more about, what our soldiers are facing and what our ministry does, we'll send a link in the description below. But you guys be praying for Israel, pray for our soldiers. It's a good time to be, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, as, Psalm says. And we just pray that you guys are blessed. And also just, it's just really inspirational to me to see from the somber tone to the celebration. Even as we were coming back from the Golan Heights and hear the siren sounds, we pulled over ahead of time because we knew it was coming, and we're standing on these grounds in the Golan Heights where the Yom Kippur War, there was so much blood spilled in the Yom Kippur War.
Mm-hmm.
And here we're standing on these grounds in Israel and just thinking, wow, as we hear the sirens, thinking about the conflict that happened right there in the grounds we were standing on. And so pray for the soldiers, pray for the families who've lost loved ones, pray for our soldiers who are in the middle of the conflict right now, that God would protect them and continue to keep Israel. And we just pray that you guys are blessed this week. God bless. Have a great one.